At this time, Senator Rosenboom, do you have any comments?
No, obviously, I think it's a good bill. I'm a little surprised we're even having the discussion, but then with that, I'll just listen to what participants have to say.
Very well. Senator Selsey, do you have any comments?
Only one comment at this time.
Okay.
You know, I went to school probably right around the same time you did, Senator Carlin, and it doesn't matter. You know, there are things that I didn't learn about when I was going through school, but you know, just because something is a knowledge base that I don't know about doesn't mean that kids don't deserve to know about it. I'll be interested to hear everybody's comments today. Thank you.
Have any members in the lobby who wish to be heard on this?
I remind them that we've got a lot of hands up, so they may
Okay.
be brief.
So I would appreciate it if because we have so many people, if you could get right to the point on your comments. I would like to see if we can get this done in half an hour. Para Basuk.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Paris Basuk, and I am a high school senior in Iowa. I'm here to speak in opposition to this legislation on behalf of the youth who could not attend this 10 a.m. meeting. The instruction of gender identity to all Iowa students is vital to the well-being of our state. Gender-inclusive curriculum in K-12 schools establishes a culture of acceptance that is sorely needed. We must ensure that our students understand the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools, and the censorship of inclusive curriculum would do the opposite. The removal of gender identity instruction is especially dangerous for transgender and gender nonconforming youth. If most students are not taught that gender identity is real, there is an increased potential for bullying and harassment for trans students in and beyond school. This discriminatory censorship sacrifices the safety of Iowa students. The reality is that gender identity cannot be erased. The existence of transgender and gender nonconforming identities is not up for debate and cannot be hidden from view. All major medical institutions in this country recognize gender identity as distinct from sex. Our state anti-discrimination laws recognize and protect the existence of diverse identities. Our federal anti-discrimination laws recognize and protect diverse gender identities. According to a peer-reviewed PRI poll, more than 62% of Americans believe that transgender people should be protected from discrimination. Senate File 167 makes a sweeping discriminatory change that is baseless and contradicted by all evidence. Transgender and gender nonconforming youth cannot be censored out of existence, and attempting to do so would be a violation of their right to education in Iowa. Finally, I would like to say that the wave of discriminatory anti-trans legislation in Iowa is not tolerated by our country at large. Iowa still relies on interstate relationships, and these discriminatory laws will further alienate Iowa from our neighbors. For the sake of Iowa and its students, I urge the senators on this subcommittee to stop Senate File 167 from progressing through the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Damian Thompson.
Thank you, Senators. I'm Damian Thompson. I'm the lobbyist for Iowa Safe Schools. We're registered opposed to this bill, and I've kind of reduced my remarks, so I'll be brief for you. So inclusive curricula benefits all students by promoting acceptance and respect and teaching them more about the diverse people and families in the world. This is just gender identity would include all people. So inclusive curricula also supports a student's ability to emphasize, connect, and collaborate with a diverse group of peers and encourages respect for all. Specifically, trans and non-binary youth that have schools with inclusive curricula report 25% less risk of suicide. LGBTQ students in schools with an inclusive curriculum heard homophobic remarks less frequently, heard negative remarks about gender expression, and heard less negative remarks about transgender people than compared to schools with inclusive curriculum. So having good curriculums like this can lead to less bullying and more safe spaces in schools. In addition, LGBTQ students with inclusive curricula have better academic and mental health outcomes and are less likely to miss school themselves. So in summary, the evidence shows that this bill will only cause harm, increasing bullying and risk of suicide across the board, and also making schools less safe for students. So please, I urge you all to oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have Damian Thompson.
No, that was Damien.
That was Damien,
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Damian. We have Daniel, help me with the pronunciation. Is it Soon or Sunny?
Sunny.
Sunny. Okay.
Thank
Actually,
you,
I do
Senator.
know you, Daniel.
Good to see you.
Right.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate the opportunity to talk and appreciate this bill. SF 167 offers elementary and middle school children some protection from indoctrination by gender theory activists, undermining parental teaching, and ignoring biological reality. In 2018, the University of Iowa Public Policy Center released a task force report that called for, quote, teaching that gender is a social construct, and emphasized the need to clarify the difference between sex and gender in class. Task force members were, quote, certain that LGBTQ inclusivity could be applied at all grade levels and across all subjects, and noted that the district's multicultural gender fair education program has already begun making incremental changes to curriculum. This is not a one school problem. Last month, Ames Community School District provided suggested kid-friendly teaching materials for elementary students that stated everyone gets to choose if they're a girl or a boy or neither or something else. An Iowa-based organization, Iowa Safe Schools, sells the school-wide Pride Guide, which includes a kindergarten through 5th grade curriculum, as well as middle school and high school editions. The National Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, or GLSEN, also has an elementary school curriculum that includes a lesson to help 3rd graders, quote, challenge their own and others' assumptions about gender. Last week, Cedar Falls School District created a webpage that directed teachers to GLSEN's curriculum, as well as the Iowa Safe Schools homepage. Not only do we have gender theory activists targeting lessons at the youngest Iowa students, parents are not informed that their children are being intentionally subjected to a curriculum designed to disrupt their idea of gender. SF 167 is about providing parents with some oversight of the ideology that schools are teaching their children. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Liz Lundberg. Liz Lundberg.
Thank you. My name is Liz Lundberg, and I'm speaking in opposition to this bill. I'm the mother of a 5-year-old transgender daughter, and I'm an educator. Advocates for inclusive curricula often describe it functioning as both a mirror and a window. When particular identities are highlighted in children's education, the kids who share those identities can see themselves reflected in what they are learning. And kids who do not share those identities can look through the window of their education into experiences they do not share. Both of these core functions of education are vital and should not be things parents have to opt their children into. As you know, transgender kids are subject to high levels of bullying, violence, and exclusion. These experiences lead to poor academic outcomes and mental health issues, up to and including horrific rates of suicide. Whether you believe those kids are who they say they are, or if you think they are confused, I know you don't want them to suffer these outcomes. When they see themselves reflected in their education and learn about gender identity in school settings, they see themselves affirmed. They see that they matter. They see that others care about them and that they belong. And transgender kids are not the only ones who benefit from being educated about gender identity. Cisgender students, that is students who are not trans, benefit from learning about their own and other people's genders. Whatever fear, confusion, or discomfort they might feel around transgender people can be addressed in a supportive way. They become less likely to say or do hurtful things. Last week, I addressed this subcommittee to voice my opposition to a different bill. In response, a stranger tracked me down on social media and sent me a message stating that I am mentally ill, that I should have my children taken away from me, and that I should be put in jail. I am confident in saying that stranger is someone who would have benefited from learning more about gender identity in school. He might still disagree with me about these bills, but such an education might have made him more able to tolerate the existence of people who are not exactly like him. Indeed, research has shown that including gender identity in elementary school curricula fosters a better school climate for all kids, trans and not, more feelings of community for all kids, increased safety and comfort for all kids, and better academic outcomes for all kids. Everyone has a gender identity, and it is useful for everyone to learn more about themselves and others. Thank you.
So
Say it out loud.
I would kind of like to have us limit our comments to 3 minutes if we could. I think we've been able to do that so far, but let's try to keep comments at a 3-minute ceiling. Looks like we have Chuck Hurley. Chuck?
Thank you, senators, for bringing this bill. I'm with the Family Leader Foundation and fully support this bill. Would encourage you to continue to work with your colleagues on both sides of the aisle, both sides of the rotunda, and the governor to try to get some perspective from parents like me who do not appreciate having curriculum that is at a minimum, in my view, confused. At some level, I think there's even a mindset that has been debased, that some people have been given over to. And as a parent of 10 children, 2 of whom were adopted out of abusive homes, I would not want them exposed to this at all without me first being notified and having a chance to review the curriculum and opt my children out. I've also been a foster parent to about 15 children, all of whom have had some kind of abuse or neglect. And this is not something that is minor. This can set a child on a trajectory for the rest of their life that in many cases is physically damaging through hormone treatments, through surgeries, and so on. And so this is not a light matter. This is not just some interesting little factoid of history. This goes to the very core of those children's beings. And so for you to recognize parental interest and involvement is uber important. I really appreciate you doing this. And I urge you to stay strong despite some of the names that people get called. I'm sorry that the previous lady was called bad names. I'm sorry when people like me get called bad names. We ought to be able to discuss this civilly, but not just capitulate to the latest fad or fashion or trend, but to actually give parents more of an investment in their children's curriculum. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you, Chuck. I believe we have Heather Dunn. Heather?
Hello, my name is Heather Dunn. I'm a transgender woman and an Iowa taxpayer. I do want to express my opposition to this bill. This bill is being promoted by an organization that has been designated as a hate group. And the fact that we are only allowed to have like a half hour of testimony when there's like lots of scientific and medical experts that can easily disprove the family leader's lies is appalling. Stop rushing these hate-filled bills through us. Let's get back to what we need done, and that is focusing on the pandemic and our economy, and let's stop this agenda of hate. Thank you.
Okay. Who do we have next? Maddie Tate Smith.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, my name is Maddie Tate Smith. I'm a parent, I'm a foster parent, and I'm also the public affairs coordinator for the Iowa Coalition Against Sexual Assault. The coalition is registered opposed to Senate File 167. Sexual violence is connected to many forms of oppression, racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, and so forth. We believe that this bill, Senate File 167, discriminates against transgender and gender nonconforming individuals by effectively denying them their existence in schools. When we talk about preventing sexual violence, the conversation has to start early. To effectively combat sexual violence, parents and educators have to have conversations with children beginning at a young age about bodily autonomy, respect, and empathy for one another. Empathy is a big one when it comes to preventing sexual violence. By educating our youth, we can build empathy. By building empathy, we can prevent sexual violence. But how can we do that when the legislature tries to push legislation like Senate File 167 every step of the way, which prohibits any kind of instruction that might help children better understand one another, to have empathy for one another, and to respect one another? With respect to the committee members, I encourage you to reject Senate File 167. I was young people deserve better, and certainly I was transgender and gender nonconforming community deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Keenan Crow.
Yes, thank you, Senators. My name is Keenan Crow with One Iowa. We represent the interests of LGBTQ Iowans, and we're opposed to this bill. So first, it's not at all clear to me what this bill would require. Gender identity as defined in the legislation means the gender-related identity of a person, regardless of their biological sex. Everyone has a gender identity, not just transgender people. Everyone on this committee, everyone in this legislature, indeed, everyone on this Zoom call has a gender identity. And when we talk about somebody being a man or a woman, we aren't often talking about their anatomical characteristics, but rather about their gender and how they interact with the world. So it seems quite possible to me that this bill could prevent discussion of the gender of historical figures, for instance, because that's what we're talking about when we're talking about their gender. The legislation as written seems to be trying to get at banning information relating to transgender people, but I'm not at all convinced that this is all it does, because it also seems to prevent most discussions of gender altogether. Second, and I think more concerning, this legislation flags information about gender identity as the most dangerous information possible. There's no other topic specifically prohibited under the Iowa educational standards in the way this one would be. There's no other topic I'm aware of which uses this two-stage opt-in mechanism that this one sets up. This and only this information is treated as if it is somehow harmful, obscene, or shameful. We know that there are age-appropriate ways to address subjects like human growth and development for elementary school kids, and this information is the same. Finally, we know that what the impact of these kinds of bills are because we've studied them. While no other state currently has a ban on information about gender identity, several have bans on information about sexual orientation. In the states that have those bans, students report that they are less likely to have supportive teachers and staff, less likely to have effective intervention from school staff in handling bullying and harassment problems, and more likely to report hearing homophobic remarks from school staff. That all adds up to one thing: creating a hostile climate for LGBTQ students, negatively impacting their mental health and making them less likely to graduate from high school. We've agreed already before that every student deserves a fair chance to succeed in school and prepare for their future, but this bill makes it difficult for transgender kids to do just that. Please reject this bill and ensure that every child, regardless of their gender, has an opportunity to learn in a safe, healthy environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret Buckton.
Margaret Buckton. Margaret?
Good morning, Senators. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Thanks for the opportunity to comment. I'm going to take a different take here about the role of school boards in making these decisions. First of all, we have an open and public process for communities and parents to have input when curriculum is being adopted. There's information in student handbooks about how to talk to parents, to principals, to the school board about any of the curriculum that you might have questions about. We believe this is an intrusion in the role of local school boards to make decisions based on their community values and those that elected them. And lastly, if school districts have recently purchased curriculum, new textbooks, as a result of this bill, they may have to incur costs to replace those. So simply on the core values of both the Urban Education Network and the Rural School Advocates of Iowa, we're registered opposed to the bill as an intrusion in local control and a potential unfunded mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Connie Ryan. Connie?
Thank you, Senator. I'm Connie Ryan. I'm the Executive Director and Lobbyist for Interfaith Alliance of Iowa Action Fund, and we strongly oppose Senate File 167. We believe children are naturally curious and they want to learn. They need lots of opportunity and a learning environment that is supportive and welcoming. All children deserve that support, that sense of welcome, and to see themselves in the curriculum and teaching that is being provided. The removal of any group or designation of any group of people, including gender identity, is harmful to all children. And I would urge you to listen to the experts that have been on this Zoom, and I would urge you to oppose this legislation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Connie. We've got Phil Jennery. Phil?
Thank you. Phil Jenner with the Iowa Association of School Boards, and we are also registered opposed to this bill. And as what Margaret sort of talked about, that's kind of the area in which I'm going to touch on, as well as others have already discussed several things. But one of the things, kind of having schools do this, schools shouldn't be at the whim of the legislature to either start or stop education based on whims of the legislature, because the legislature can change, and it's a dangerous precedent to start going down the road of what schools can and cannot teach based on a specific legislature, and also putting requirements on what type of education that our students can receive. We don't want the legislature dictating what can and cannot be taught, because that doesn't benefit all students. And finally, this should really be a local a decision. Most schools, if not all, already have a process for curriculum in this area that notifies the parents of when it's going to be taught. And if there are issues, parents should be talking with the teachers, with the administration on what can be done if they do have issues. And I think most schools, if not all, already have that avenue. So for those reasons, we are opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Looks like we have Ella Rosenthal. What were you saying, Ken?
I was trying.
Thank you. My name is Ella Rosenthal, and I'm a high school senior in Iowa City. As someone growing up in such a polarized world, I've learned that not just if you disagree with someone, that doesn't mean that you're not required to learn about them. Simply, because I, or more specifically my parents, don't see a group of people as or a topic as valid or aligning with my views, I still need to learn about them. I understand the intent of this bill is to ensure family comfort with these topics. However, as someone who was taught at age 9 to let my dog die if there was a fire, age appropriateness could be debated extensively. However, at the end of the day, this real world knowledge is important. Senate File 167 and encourage you to halt it, because it does not only restrict that important part of education that's learning about real world topics, but as a result of preventing students from learning about the modern world, it prevents students from becoming informed citizens. This also sets a precedent that my education is more about what I believe in and less about what the world is truly like. And this, in addition, this sets a course for the Iowa legislature that allows partisan changes and adaptations to education, and thus their ability to become informed Americans, simply because of the fear of what would happen should they learn about different beliefs in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Melissa Peterson.
Good morning, Senators.
Morning.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, Melissa Peterson with the Iowa State Education Association. We are registered in opposition to this bill for many of the reasons that have already been stated, but I would just like to encourage the subcommittee to understand how dangerous it would be, frankly, for us to start related to protected classes under the Iowa Civil Rights Act. If we were to start down this path and prohibit instruction related to gender identity, arguably we could also prohibit instruction related to race, physical disability, sex as protected classes under the Iowa Civil Rights Act. And so for that reason and many, many others, we encourage you to not move this bill forward. Thank you.
Sarah Chang, move ahead. Okay, Carol.
What's that?
Nothing.
Sarah Chang. Sarah?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to say that it's a very slippery slope to call out certain topics for exclusion from the school curriculum. If gender identity is not being unfairly singled out, where is the line drawn? Will students have to be opted in to learn about various cultural identities, religious identities? If so, then the whole social studies curriculum might as well become opt-in. If not, don't single out topics for exclusion from mention in educational settings. Please vote no on SF 167. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Danny, Carol? Danny? You're on mute?
Okay, can you hear me, Senator?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'll be as brief as I can. It's been interesting to listen to the comments during the subcommittee meeting from those who are opposed to the legislation. It seems that many are missing the point. The question isn't whether or not gender identity should be included in curriculum. The question is, should the parents give their written permission? Why would you not want that? If in fact we are concerned about the well-being of children, particularly when it comes to gender identity, why wouldn't we want to make sure that parents are involved? Children spend a lot more time in the home with their parents than they do at school. Evidently, those who are opposed to the legislation are concerned that parents will not give their written permission, and they would prefer then to include the curriculum, the gender identity in the curriculum, without parents either knowing or giving permission. I think that does a great disservice to parents of Iowa. Nobody loves their children more than a parent. Nobody would be more interested and more concerned with their well-being and future growth and development, particularly as it involves human reproduction and human growth and development. So thank you for making this available. Let's make sure that we involve parents and not cut them out of the process, and simply ask for their written permission, give them information upon which they can base good decisions about the education of their children. So thank you, and I am happy to support this, not just as a lobbyist here at the Capitol, but as a father and a grandfather. Thank you.
I think we've got time for one more, and then I'm going to ask the senators for comment. Jamie Birch Elliott. Jamie?
Thank you, senators. My name is Jamie Birch Elliott. I'm here representing Planned Parenthood North Central States, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Iowa. We are opposed to this bill, and my colleagues have made a lot of really great points. And so, I'll just make this really brief. It is important for Iowa's youth to feel included and represented in Iowa's curriculum. And I would agree with my colleagues that have said this is an overreach in the state legislature, inserting themselves into what should be conversations between school boards, teachers, parents, and families. So we are opposed to this bill, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Senator Celsey, do you have any comment?
I do. Thank you, Senator. Thank you to all the Iowans who came here today to express their views and their heartfelt, personal, and sometimes painful testimonies. I feel extremely sad that the othering of Iowans continues with this Republican legislature. I truly think it's shameful. I do see many benefits of talking about gender identity in schools, some of which I kind of alluded to in my opening comments. There are many people, including adults and educators, that need more understanding of this topic. They need more education about this topic. So I think we have an opportunity to be able to talk about gender identity freely so that more people know what it is and know how we can help youth, especially in schools, cope with some of the unintended consequences of adult behavior. I'm just going to say it. Mr. Carroll made a comment. Nobody loves their children more than a parent, which is typically true. However, when a child has gender identity issues going on, sometimes a parent doesn't understand what is going on, and they look to their school system and their support system to be able to help them. And that's exactly what happens. I've read my email. A lot of it's from educators saying bills like this are extremely harmful. We're the ones who pick up the pieces at school when things go wrong at home. So this is, it's an education process for all of us, and we all need to be there for our kids. And then another concern that I have is that, something doesn't have to be exactly in the curriculum for subject matter to come up in the classroom. Teachers are looked to as authority figures, as mentors, and other educators as well, and administrators, principals, superintendents, you name it. Even classroom assistants or parents helping in the classroom. If a child has a question, who doesn't answer that question with, attention and a love and trying to do your best to explain something to a child? So I think this is a completely misguided piece of legislation, completely unnecessary, because as several people have already noted, we do have a permission system already in place for these kinds of things. However, I just think it's going down a road that we don't want to go down. And it's very hateful and discriminatory and frankly traumatizing for transgender Iowans and their allies to go through this again and again. I'm opposed to this and I will not be signing the subcommittee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rosenberg?
Thank you, Senator. The very fact that the gender theory activists believe that they need to hide this instruction from parents tells me all I need to know. I don't recall parents being cut out of educational decisions like this before in curriculum and that sort of thing. The family is the most basic human social institution, and for the schools to insert themselves squarely between the parents and the child is simply unthinkable to me. Not a single constituent of mine in Senate District 40 has expressed any opposition to this bill. On the contrary, many have talked to me. They cannot believe that we even have to do this because they don't believe that this, I think someone used the word indoctrination, is possibly part of our school curriculum. So I will sign the bill to advance the bill, the legislation out of subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So I do have some concerns about keeping parents out of the loop on issues related to sexual identity. I do have concerns about sexualizing the identity of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old when they're still very, very young, don't have a really grounded sense of who they are, and to exclude parents almost tantamount to making them enemies of the child or depicting them as enemies of the child. When we've used the word conversations, what this is doing is leaving parents out of very, very important conversations. What this is about is restoring parental involvement in very serious conversations. And many of you have expressed concern about suicide rates. I can't think of anything more important than to involve parents in the lives of their children when there are high suicide rates. By some estimates, 40% suicide rates. And so to have instruction in school that could put a child on a path to suicide and leave parents out is just not something I think is tenable for me. Morally, it's untenable to leave parents out of conversations that serious. So I am going to vote this bill out of committee, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Senators, I have one more comment. To your point, Senator Carlin, transgender youth are at a higher suicide risk. And sometimes that is due to the parents' inability to understand what is going on in their life. And sometimes the school counselor and educators and folks in their school are the people that are helping them so that they do not commit suicide. I want to make that point clear. Thank you.
Thank you for that. But I don't think the answer to that is leaving parents out of a very important conversation like this. So anything else?
No, I'm
okay.
done.
With that, I believe we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.